What is up, everyone, and welcome back. Hope you all are doing very well today. I hope you're having a great day. Today's going to be a different video. If you clicked on the link in the description, you know that. You guys are pretty used to me branching out on content at this point. But it's September 11th here in the United States. It's been 18 years now since that incredibly terrible and incredibly tragic day that unfolded on the East Coast in the United States of America that affected people all across the world, with the lives lost in the World Trade Center, in Pennsylvania, and at the Pentagon. And I wanted to share my personal experiences about 9/11 and what happened, and how and why they still affect me to this very day. Why this day is always a tough one for me and for so many others as well. A total of 2,974 victims died that day. I am excluding the terrorists from the equation. And post 9/11, the toll is 2,996. Several other countries and families around the world lost lives as well. And it was a day that changed so many lives. Certainly in the United States. Certainly my life. I grew up in Northern Virginia, not too far outside of the Pentagon. And my mom at the time was living in an area called Billy's Crossroads, which is right on the border of Fairfax, Arlington, and Alexandria, deep in the middle of Northern Virginia, less than 12 miles from Washington, D.C. And she was actually less than 5 miles from the Pentagon when the aircraft hit the Pentagon. All of my friends from that area were certainly affected. I used to take the metro, which is the subway system in DC area, through the Pentagon for close to a year when I was living in an area called Springfield and working in an area called Clarendon. And used to go through the Pentagon. I actually used to slug, meaning it was kind of ride sharing. You meet up at a location so people could jump on what they call the HOV lanes, the high occupancy vehicle lanes in Northern Virginia, so you could go a little faster and not deal with the traffic. So I used to slug to the Pentagon and usually bum rides with a lot of the officers that were serving there. At the time of September 11th, I was a young flight operations specialist in the United States Army, and I was stationed at Camp Stanley in Korea with an aviation unit there, 2nd Battalion, 2nd Aviation Regiment. And we were a Black Hawk helicopter unit, medium transport helicopters, doing air assault work. And I was getting ready to come home. I had 7 days to start my out processing, my clearing, my preparation to leave Korea and head to my new duty station. I'd been in the Army for roughly 18 months. I joined in February of 2000. And actually shipped down to basic training in March, the end of March of 2000. 21 March to be exact. So I'd gotten to Korea in October of 2000. So I'd been there for 11 months. And as fate would have it, my unit was at a training area, and we were 5 days into the middle of a 10-day field exercise, running air assaults and doing some work with other units in our division when 9/11 happened. So we were pretty isolated. We were sharing the area with another unit, the training area that we were at. And it's a memory that I can't shake. I was working day shift as a radio operator. So our shift change happened at 6 o'clock in the morning, or 06 to a lot of you Europeans and military and law enforcement and all that good stuff out there that might be watching this. So I got in, as usual, about 25 minutes prior to shift change, so I could go over the log and do the Vulcan mind meld with my outcoming radio operator and find out what happened on his shift. And I'm looking through his log, and you can feel the energy in our operations area. Everybody was really tense. I mean, it was palpable. You could just feel that emotion of it. It's hard to describe the change from earlier to then. And just a really, really powerful thing. So I'm reading his logs, and I get to the entries: aircraft hits first tower. First tower falls, aircraft hits second tower. I don't completely remember the order at this point. It's been a couple of years, but I remember the gist of the words. And I looked at him and was like, dude, what's going on? And he was so shook up. It was just that he was not the guy that I knew that had come into the unit about a month or two before we went out to the field. Very somber, really upset. And you could see that everybody on that shift was shaken and full of emotion. He says, man, just wait for the shift change. I said, all right. So read the rest of his log, and I just sat there patiently with the shift change happen, and we got briefed. This wasn't part of the field exercise. This wasn't part of our field problem. It was real. And so many emotions just hit you like a wall. It's like this weight that just kind of starts beating on you and slowly starts to suffocate your rationality. And so many thoughts started swirling around my head. The first one, big one, was, are my family and friends okay? My dad was supposed to be flying out to LA that morning from Washington, Dulles. And I was like, is he alive? My buddy that was in my section, that was in the talk as well, or in the operations center as well, his dad worked at the Pentagon on the Army side, and both of us were the only two that had family in that area, and we were both really concerned about our families, specifically both about our fathers. I knew my mom worked in that area as well, so I was worried about her. I was worried about my buddies that worked right down the road at Pentagon City Mall. And I didn't bring a cell phone out to the field. Most of us didn't. Some did, but I never wanted to focus on outside stuff when I was in the field. I wanted to just handle the mission and get it done. And I talked to you when I got back in typically 10 to 14 days. Thankfully, cell phones were provided, and those of us that had family in the area were able to call our families and find out if they were okay. Thankfully, my buddy's dad, being on the Army side of the Pentagon, the five-sided puzzle palace, was okay, and he was good. However, some of his friends were not. Some of the people he knew and served with and spent and worked with were not okay. They weren't there. They were no longer with us. They were angels. My dad was fine. He didn't fly that day, thankfully. My mom was okay. My brother was okay. My friends were okay. So that weight came off our shoulders, came off my shoulders, came off my buddy's shoulders, came off the rest of us that had family out there's shoulders. And in a way, it was good because we could focus on mission and focus on that field problem. But suddenly, life became much, much more real for us. It's always real when you're training up. But when you suddenly realize that you're at war, it's an instantaneous change in most people's brains. I've talked to several and known many people that served at the same time I did, and some that I eventually wound up deploying with. And it was just this instantaneous shift of, all right, we're in the military, we're in the U.S. Army, we're probably going to deploy, we're probably going to war. We are at war. We might personally see it. And the unit we were sharing the training area with left. They packed up and they went back home. They went back to their camp. My battalion commander, a man of long experience and a lot of flight time, made the decision to keep us out there. But he called us all together, did a rare formation out in the field where we all gathered up, and kind of a loose thing. It was very informal, but he talked about his decision, and I still to this day agree with it. We had to focus on doing what we were going to do and truly get better at it, because odds are the skills that we were training were going to be needed and going to be utilized, and I can certainly tell you that they absolutely were. And I called on so much of that experience in deployments that I wound up going on afterwards to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And for me personally, it was hard because I knew that I had orders to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Fort Bragg is a rapid deploying installation, meaning those units typically wind up going when things happen. And I understood full well that I was probably going to wind up deploying within a year, and that absolutely did happen. We had our orders at the end of April of 2002, and we were in country by the end of July, early August of 2002 in Afghanistan. So it happened. We wound up, but it was different for us as compared to other people, especially that we're already back, because we had 5 days of, we're still very isolated out there doing our thing. We weren't caught up with the immediate aftermath. We were focusing on the task at hand. So I missed the outcries of emotion afterwards. from the U.S. because I simply wasn't there. When I got back to Camp Stanley, which is a camp outside of the city of Uijeongbu in the northern part of South Korea, roughly 17 miles from the demilitarized zone. I think it might be a little bit farther. It's been a while since I've looked it up. But I was taken aback. We had 3 gates on the camp and 2 vehicle gates, 1 walkout gate. And there were little memorials from the local Korean population outside of the gates, and all the Korean nationals that we dealt with on base, on post, or camp were incredibly wonderful, incredibly sweet. They were already really good to us. I had some absolutely amazing times over there, and I absolutely love that country, and I love the Korean people, and they have this incredibly large spot in my heart. But they earned even more from that moment, and they certainly understand it, considering the threat they're constantly under and what happened to their country not even 60 years before that, 50 at that point. So there are plenty of people that still absolutely remembered the active engagement with in the Korean War itself. And I say active combat because to this day they're still in armistice. It's never been a formal peace treaty signed. So they lost people in the World Trade Center. So it was very heartwarming. And as I was clearing and actually had to leave the camp, which was the only times I was allowed to because we were locked down, we weren't allowed to go anywhere due to threat conditions. So they were just so many gentle displays of affection, people coming up and putting their hands on you and gently saying I'm sorry, or apologizing, or sharing that grief was an incredibly powerful experience. And I'm very thankful and grateful for being able to share that with such an amazing country, because they were just, I love Korea. I love Korea. I love the Korean people, and always will. They'll always have a very special place in my heart. And it's just, it's so raw. Those emotions are just so powerful, and I still feel them when I think about it. It's like it happened yesterday, even though it's been 18 years. And I've gone, but the course of my life for the next 10 and a half years that I spent in the United States Army was all driven from that moment. You know, we had rotations to Bosnia and Kosovo, but nothing like what we were dealing in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and eventually in Iraq, and now Syria. So it always makes me think, and makes me emotional. It also makes me very grateful to know that I can share this with people and try to explain a little bit. You know, there's nobody I talk to from that up there, especially that was my age in that time period, or even younger, that wasn't affected. The people I know and love in New York City and Jersey and Connecticut really experienced that as well. And I don't know anybody who was in at the time, or even getting ready to go in, that doesn't have some kind of incredibly powerful experience. And even talking to other country service members that I've had a chance to serve with and spend time in Iraq and Afghanistan with, didn't have a story of their own about how that affected their lives and why to this very day it's still so powerful. It's funny, Dream Theater released their Live in New York record. I actually saw it sitting at my favorite little music shop called Sayonara Music in Ouijanpu, this tiny little hole in the wall place. Oh, I spent so much money there. I loved those people. But it had the Dream Theater logo in flames in New York City. And then, of course, a couple of days later, the towers fell. And that skyline was forever changed. So when I deployed in 05, I don't have any images of it. I should have found one for you. Our Punisher patch, the unit I deployed to Iraq with, had the towers and the Pentagon in our image that was on our flight suits, and that's still one of the most amazing patches I've ever seen. Not to mention, I mean, for many reasons, but I wanted to share this with you. Try to, for some of you that, and on all the different countries, give you a personal experience of just how much it shook us and why it means so much to us. And so many people did so many amazing things that day. The law enforcement and first responders were just beyond incredible. Steve Buscemi, the actor, has some great stories about helping in the aftermath of 9/11 with fire departments. And we certainly cannot forget the flight in Pennsylvania that, knowing that they were probably going to die, decided to attempt to retake the plane. That is their sacrifice and their actions cannot be understated and cannot be forgotten, because they gave their lives to protect the country and they have successfully managed to abort a fourth strike. But that's all from me, folks. Just wanted to share this with you. You know, you may or may not agree with the country, and I'm not going to get into all that. Politics is not something I care about, but it's the people and the way it shaped our lives, the way it shaped my life. You know, for better or for worse, I will always be tied. My life will always be tied to what happened on 9/11. And truly, I think it made me a better person, especially in the long run. Here I get to share all this with you and to continue to make content for you. And I'm blessed very much to do that. Thank you, guys. I love you. A humongous thank you to law enforcement, military, veterans, and first responders, and to the families of those that were lost, for continuing the fight and continuing to remember and continuing to not forget what happened so it doesn't once again occur. So I appreciate you guys as well. You guys have been awesome. I have been Baldman. I'll see you in the next one. Be excellent to each other and keep head banging.